Welcome to our second of a series based on Myers Psychology for AP second edition, AP Psychology high school textbook. And today we're going to be talking about module 24, and that will be the effects of sleep deprivation, the various sleep disorders, and then we will probably get to dreams in this section as well. So let's go ahead and take a look. First of all, we know from our last segment that sleep is definitely needed and that our sleep needs do change. Indeed, basically when we are, for example, newborns, we need up to 18 hours of sleep per night. And we also notice an amazing thing. In that 18 hours, almost half of that time is in REM sleep. Scientists have proposed that if we could figure out a way to get into REM sleep and actually get more REM sleep out of our sleep period, the 7 or 8 or 9 hours of night that we're sleeping, then we would actually be able to sleep less. We would need less sleep if we spent more time on in REM. The process of something called REM rebound is an interesting term. And the idea is that if we actually do not get into REM sleep enough, that's, for example, staying up very late studying for AP psychology tests or doing modules in the study guides, for example. If we lose our sleep for a period of time, basically what we're going to do is we're going to be behind. And we're never really going to be able to catch up. It would be great if we could just sleep for days on end and stock up all the sleep and then go for several days in a row and never sleep at all. But that's just not the way it works. Now, REM rebound says that if we do go without sleep for a period of time, to make up on REM, we will spend more time in REM the next few nights. So that's actually a good biological mechanism for our bodies to do, and it emphasizes how important REM sleep must be for our body to figure out a way to make it up should we actually missed it, and which of course is our fault. So, sleep deprivation, sleep disorders, and dreams. Let's start first with a little sleepiness quiz. Here's a simple test that doctors use to find out if you're actually sleepy. Now I'm going to give you if you're actually not getting enough sleep. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the short version and then I'm going to give you the longer version, which is in the textbook Myers Psychology for AP second edition. The green book is what we call it. So what you're going to do is you're going to rate yourself. And now I'd like for you to go ahead and do this on a piece of paper, or if you're one of my students, just do it on the margin of your PowerPoint. And so rate yourself in each of the following situations using this scale. 0 is that you have no chance of dozing off. 2 is that you have a slight chance of dozing. 3 is a moderate chance of dozing, or 2 is a moderate chance of dozing, and then 3 is a high chance of dozing. Again, 0, no dozing at all. 1 slight, 2 moderate, and 3 high. Sorry. If you're just sitting and actually reading, okay, not reading your psychology textbook because that would be way too exciting and you would never fall asleep during that, but just reading anything else. Number 2, watching television. Again, you're marking these down in your PowerPoint. Number 3, is sitting inactive in a public place, like in a theater, for example. I'm assuming the movie hasn't started yet, and your phone is out of battery. Number 4, as a passenger in a car for about an hour without a break. So, again, I'm going to assume you're not on your phone. Number 5, lying down to rest in the afternoon when circumstances permit. Sound familiar? A lot of people, a lot of high school juniors and seniors going home and taking a nap from a very tiring day and staying up late studying. That's also a siesta period, which is part of our built-in sleep cycle. Number 6, sitting and talking to someone. We're going to assume that someone is somewhat interesting. Number 7, sitting quietly after lunch without alcohol. Interestingly enough, that is the way high school lunches are served, without alcohol, I hope. And number 8, in a car while stopped for a few minutes in traffic. So if you add up your scores, and if your total is 10 or more, which I'm betting it is, you may have excessive daytime sleepiness, which is also known as EDS. This could indicate an underlying sleep disorder, so talk to your doctor. Now technically that is an EDS test. Let's go ahead and also go ahead and quickly number 1 through 15. I'll pause for a minute to allow you to do that. While you're numbering 1 through 15 on your paper, and you'll be answering with a capital T or a capital F for true or false. Cornell University psychologist James Mass has reported that most students suffer the consequences of sleeping less than they should. If you see you're in that group, answer the following true-false questions. And from my experience, all of you are sleep deprived. So technically, in some cases, you might have insomnia, which we'll talk about a definition as a sleep disorder later on. So here we go. Number 1. This is true or false. I need an alarm clock in order to wake up at the appropriate time. Number 2. It's a struggle for me to get out of bed in the morning. Number 3. Weekday mornings I hit snooze several times to get more sleep. Number 4. I feel tired, irritable, and stressed out during the week. Number 5. I have trouble concentrating and remembering. Number 6. I feel slow with critical thinking, problem solving, and being creative. Number 6. I often fall asleep watching television or watching videos on YouTube or whatever. I often fall asleep in boring meetings or lectures in warm rooms. It's precisely why I keep my room very chilly. Number 9, I often fall asleep after heavy meals. It makes it difficult for 4th and 5th period and 6th and 7th period. I often fall asleep while relaxing after dinner. Number 11, I often fall asleep within minutes of getting into bed. Now you're probably thinking, wait a minute, that sounds like a good thing. Well, actually, there should be some 5 to 10 minute period for you to fall asleep. If you're so completely exhausted that you fall asleep the second your head hits your pillow, that probably means that you've got a little bit too much fatigue. I often feel drowsy while driving. Ladies and gentlemen, again, this is a dangerous situation. The only way to help with drowsy driving is to basically pull over and get sleep. And it's not safe to do if you're actually doing a long trip and you're pulling off to a rest stop. Go and get sleep somewhere safe. I often sleep extra hours on weekend mornings. Well, that's definitely true for almost everybody, including yours truly. I often need a nap to get through the day. And finally, I have dark circles around my eyes. Got that one too. Now, according to this, if you answered yes to 3 or more items, you probably are not getting enough sleep. Wow, big surprise, right? To determine your sleep needs, Dr. Mass recommends that you go to bed 15 minutes earlier than usual every night for the next week, and continue this practice by adding 15 more minutes each week until you can, and here's your graduation day, till you can wake without an alarm clock and feel alert all day. Now, of course, that waking without an alarm clock is kind of a really difficult thing to do, especially with having to get up so early. I think this quiz probably was more intended for adults that don't have to go to school at 7:30 in the morning. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what a lot of you look like first period, first thing in the morning. The effects of sleep deprivation have been studied for years, and now the jury is in and we know what the verdict is. And the verdict is that sleep loss can cause fatigue, impaired concentration, depressed immune system, and most definitely greater vulnerability to accidents. The quality of sleep that you get determines what kind of mood you're in, how alert you are, how much energy you have, how you actually think, how productive you are, and how safe you are. And for those of you that are actually athletes, imagine, just try to get more sleep and imagine what the results will be when you have more sleep, especially for sports that require a lot of cognitive processing. The sleeping brain is highly active and regulates the immune, the hormone, and the cardiovascular functions. So without enough sleep, you're actually having health issues. You can have health issues as well. And it replenishes the neurotransmitters in the brain. These rescue workers here have been working all night long and finally fell asleep while helping people during an earthquake in Japan. U.S. Navy and National Institute of Health studies have shown that age and sleep loss and chronic sleep loss and springing ahead and falling back, all can affect us. So let's take a look at some of these. First of all, some numbers. 43% of adults are moderately severely sleep deprived and they know it. 50% of adults say they get enough sleep. 63% experience some type of sleep problems each week. And sleep deprivation can actually cost us as a nation $100 billion a year with mistakes made and accidents happen and so forth. Interesting thing with regard to sleep studies, they've had and interviewed people and they've actually found that people will actually say, I'm not sleepy at all. And they put them in a room where there's nothing to do in the room, no TV, no phone or anything, and within 10 minutes they're actually asleep in the chair. Sleep deprivation, most people would sleep 9 hours if they actually could. Teenagers are supposed to get 9.25 hours, and yes, the laughing can go ahead and stop now because I know none of you are close to that average. If you are, you probably don't have much of a life. Just kidding. But it's great if you do have that amount of sleep because you know what it's like to work at maximum sleep and have all of your energy and so forth actually at your fingertips. As I said, the sleep debt cannot be banked or repaid. I said that earlier in Module 23. There's an increase in automobile accidents, metabolic and hormonal functioning can be affected, most notably weight gain. Yes, weight gain for lack of sleep. And decrease in productivity, performance, creativity, and decision making. That's what gets us the $100 billion of loss per year and mistakes that are made. It will not, and here's an interesting little tidbit of information, it won't necessarily affect performance of tasks that require physical skill or intellectual judgment. But it will hurt your performance on simple, boring tasks. So if you're doing your particular sport and you're having trouble with some of the basic stuff that you should have learned years ago when you first started that sport, that explains it. If you're forgetting little simple things that you should have probably known about different subjects from a long time ago, that explains it as well. The most reliable effect to actually know if you're actually have sleep loss is the fact of sleepiness itself, and that is that you know that you're sleepy. And of course, when you lose sleep, your immune system can break down. This is precisely why a lot of you get colds during semester exams. It's because you have such a lack of sleep and it makes you more susceptible to colds and flu. In studies done on the falling ahead and springing back, which we're about ready to do when this video is being done here, we're about ready to go and fall back and lose an hour of sleep. In the springtime change, gain an hour of sleep and fall. Spring ahead, fall back. So when we spring ahead, we lose an hour. When we fall back, we gain an hour. So in the spring, when the time change, and of course those of you watching this video in Arizona, it doesn't matter to you because you don't have daylight savings time. But for those that do, here's what they found. When we lose an hour of sleep, accidents go up. And when we gain an hour of sleep, accidents go down. How can this be graphically represented? Well, take a look. Here's your springtime change right here with hours of sleep lost, and that's the number of accidents that goes up. And here is, that's your normal amount, and this is how much we've actually had more accidents. Not twice as much. This is, keep in mind, this is just going from a little less than 2,600 accidents to 2,800. But that's still quite a few more accidents. Now if we look at the other side, this is how many accidents we actually have on the Monday after the time change when we've gained an amount of sleep. And just gaining an hour of sleep, we have 200 and some less accidents. Let's take a look at the physiological effects of sleep loss in the human body. Love this guy's boxer shorts here. So we look at the brain and the diminished focus, the immune system as I mentioned, fat cells, yes, gaining weight, joints, added inflammation and arthritis for those people that are older, muscles, reduced strength and slow reaction time, stomach, again, more hunger arousing ghrelin. Ghrelin is your appetite hormone, and it is produced in greater amounts, making you hungrier when you actually have less sleep, and it decreases the amount of leptin, which is a hormone that manages your fat cells in your body, and then of course your heart. If you want to go ahead and create the perfect setting for sleep, what you need to do is keep it dark, reclaim your bed, get rid of all the other stuff that's on your bed, like AP Psychology, homework, and stuff like that. Get the right kind of mattress. Make sure that you've got a good mattress. Block out the world, basically, so that you can get rid of all the light and all the possible intrusions. Fresh air is good. White noise can actually be helpful. A fan, for example. Make sure the temperature is right. Cooler is better than warmer. Make sure it's quiet. And, of course, have yourself a really awesome pillow. All right, so in creating your ideal sleeping area, that's pretty important. Now let's take a look at the major sleep disorders, and we'll cover them. Some of them are very common, and some of them are not quite so common. Probably the most common sleep disorder of all is insomnia. Insomnia, of course, is persistent problems in falling or staying asleep, and about 10 to 15% of adults have some degree of insomnia. Now, one of the #1 treatments for insomnia is actually sleeping pills, and they can actually make it worse. You can actually become addicted to the sleeping pills, or you can have sleeping medication-induced insomnia. The common prescribed drugs for sleep are benzodiazepines. Ambien and Sonata are probably the two most common, but over the counter you can actually get antihistamines as well. Other sleep disorders, for example, the sleeping pills, as I said, can make insomnia worse, can make you more dependent. And then there's something called drug dependency insomnia, which is where sleeplessness will follow when you actually stop taking sleeping pills. To be honest, folks, taking sleeping pills is just basically a no-win solution in most cases. All right? There are people that pretty much have to take it, like, for example, as I mentioned in Module 21 or Module 20, people with tinnitus are going to need some type of medication because the ringing in their ears actually keeps them awake. Temporary insomnia is a brief period of sleeplessness caused by worry, stress, and excitement. Generally speaking, you should try to avoid fighting it and just read a book or so forth until you're actually struggling to stay awake. Again, don't read that psychology book. That'll keep you up all night. It's so fascinating. Chronic insomnia exists if sleeping troubles last more than 3 weeks. You should probably try to adopt a regular schedule and go to bed at the same time. And yes, and some of you are looking forward to Thanksgiving, which is going to happen in about a month from now. Tryptophan is a real sleep-inducing aid, and yes, it is found in turkey. And what it does is it increases serotonin levels, which leads to not only sleepiness, but happiness as well. Unless, of course, there's a really bad football game on. Narcolepsy, which has obviously been popularized in a lot of movies where people have fallen asleep just at the drop of a hat, which is technically not really the way it works. But narcolepsy is sudden, uncontrollable, irresistible sleep attacks. Some people may actually suffer from catalepsy, which is sudden temporary muscle paralysis. Now, I don't like to make fun of animals, but there is on YouTube a sensation a few years ago with the cataleptic goats. They're called the fainting goats, and I think a lot of you guys have seen them on the video. Basically, this is a genetic disorder in the goats that upon scaring them or startling them, their muscles seize up and they will literally fall over and be paralyzed. It sounds really horrible, but it is somewhat amusing, I have to admit. Narcolepsy, though, is genetic also, and it runs in families, and it can be psychologically brought on by incredible stress or anxiety issues. It's triggered by strong emotion, and generally about 1 in 2,000 people have some degree of narcolepsy. Other sleep disorders that are very dangerous include sleep apnea, and as I spoke about earlier in my talk on Module 23, night terrors. There's not sleepwalking and sleep talking. I mentioned sleep talking a little bit, and sleepwalking as well. I believe I mentioned that sleepwalking. I would tell you about an article later on. Here's that article. Sleepwalking has been used as a defense in crimes, but before you're thinking, wow, what a great way to get away with going and robbing a bank or something like that, I could tell everybody I was walking in my sleep. Unfortunately, you're probably not going to get away with it unless you have a long history of sleepwalking issues that has been documented by a psychiatrist or a hospital or a psychologist. However, there was a man in Louisburg, I'm not sure what state that's in, I found, that in Franklin County, wherever that is, And again, this person actually was sleepwalking and fatally stabbed someone. Now, you may be wondering, well, if we're not convicted for the stabbing, then the person goes free? No. Basically, somebody with this type of sleeping problem is going to be hospitalized.